Hi everyone, welcome to SJ's classes. We have come down to the last topic that has been prescribed in the paper, Art and Literary Aesthetics. I have done video lessons on all the other 28 topics given in this paper. I have posted them on my channel. You can access those video lessons by clicking on the Art and Literary Aesthetics playlist link that I have embedded in the description box. This video lesson will give you the perceptions regarding the art form of dance shared by the American dancer Isadora Duncan through one of her popular essays, The Dancer of the Future. Now, for those of you who are not aware of who Isadora Duncan is, here is a very brief introduction. Angel Isadora Duncan is her full name. She was either born on May 26, 1877 or May 27, 1878. Now, it is generally believed that she was born on May 27, 1878, but recently her baptism certificate was discovered in San Francisco, and this is why her birth year has been recently changed to May 26, 1877. She died on September 14, 1927 in France. It was a tragedy. It was a tragic ending. I'll talk about it a bit later on in the video lesson. She was born on 1877 and she died in 1927. Now, who is Isadora Duncan? She was an American dancer who was popular throughout the Europe and the US. She was among the first to raise dance to the status of creative art, and that is why she is often referred to as the mother of modern dance. And that is also perhaps why she has been enlisted in your syllabus, which talks about art and its aesthetics. Duncan's earliest public appearances were recorded in Chicago and New York City in 1896, but were met with little success, and therefore, at the age of 21, she left the United States to seek recognition abroad. That's how she came to England in 1897. During the following years, Duncan lived and worked in the great cities of Europe. She also toured with the producer and playwright Augustin Daly, who cast Duncan as Titania in his production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. In 1903, she moved to Berlin. There, Duncan was introduced to the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche. She formulated her own philosophy of the dance of the future, modeled after the ancient Greeks. She also called for abolition of ballet, which she accused of deforming the beautiful woman's body and depriving it of human naturalness. Now you'll come across a detailed analysis of all these points while we read this particular essay by Isadora Duncan, the essay titled The Dancer of the Future. She developed her own technique with loose tunics. Loose tunics means loose fitting garments. So she developed her own technique with loose tunics, bare feet, and flowing hair, all aspects inspired by Greek sculpture and philosophy. Now, one thing you would definitely note in the essay that we are about to read is her infatuation or her appeal for Greek sculptures, Greek art, all these things. Isadora founded her first dance school in 1905 outside of Berlin to train dancers for a company named as the Isadorables. She was also published her autobiography. It came out in the same year in which she died. Her autobiography is titled My Life and it was published in 1927. Some of her popular dance works include Petals, The Furies, The Three Graces, The Mother, and The Revolutionary. Now, about her death. It was as dramatic as her life, and it happened on September 14, 1927, the very year in which her autobiography was also published, but it happened posthumously. Now, she encountered a young driver in Nice, France, and she suggested him to take her for a spin in his open air Bugatti sports car. As the car took off, she reportedly shouted to her friends, "Goodbye, my friends, I go to glory." And moments later, her trailing shawl became entangled in the rear wheel of the Bugatti sports car and it broke her neck instantly and she died on the spot. So that was a tragic ending to a popular dance figure. Despite Duncan's untimely death, her legacy continues to inspire contemporary artists and boundary breaking minds around the world. There are over 40 books about Isadora Duncan, countless drawings, paintings, and sculptures, two major motion pictures, a dozen TV documentaries, and also several plays and poems. So, these are some of the works which her life influenced. Now, coming over to the essay that we will discuss today, it's titled The Dancer of the Future. This is actually a chapter that has been taken from her work titled The Art of the Dance. It was written around 1902 and was first published in 1928. Now, this is a very long essay, therefore, I won't be reading out the entire text, but I would rather give you a summary of the portion of the text that is displayed on the screen. So what you can do is you can pause between each slide, you can read through the text and then listen to my interpretation of the paragraphs. So Duncan begins this extract or chapter by stating that there is a harmony or unity in the movement of waves and winds and the earth, and we must understand that this harmony or unity is something that is consistent or lasting for a long time. This harmony in movement is seen in everything around us, even in the movement of free animals and birds. So she places this emphasis on the movement of free animals and birds. She states that it is only when we hold animals captive that they adopt a movement different from this, and then their movements become one that is expressive of their captive states. She brings in the concept of captivity and restricted movement from animals to the humans in this part of the essay. She says that the movement of civilized man too conveys this captivity. Earlier, the savages lived in constant touch with nature, and therefore their movements were free and unrestricted, and therefore natural and beautiful. Duncan ends this part by stating that we need to go back to that mature state where our movements were expressive of the free mind, and only then our movements will become natural and beautiful like those of the free animals. So she is raising a criticism in this part of the essay against the contemporary art form, contemporary dance, especially ballet. And she also suggests what needs to be done as a possible panacea or cure to this problem. In this paragraph, Duncan gives a particular name to the movement in man that is in harmony with the elements outside or the universe. She calls it the will. She states that just as the movement of earth is in response to the movement or forces of the celestial bodies that surround it, every creature on the earth accumulates this movement or will in itself and transfers from one generation to the other. She concludes this part by saying that dance should simply be a reflection of this movement or will. Now, this is that part of the essay where she begins to criticize the existing school of ballet, which she thought was very unnatural and against the harmonious movement of elements of universe. She says that today's ballet vainly strives against, meaning unsuccessfully tries to go against natural laws of gravitation, or as what Duncan calls it, natural will of the individual, and thereby produces nothing but sterile movements that is completely in discord with the movement of nature. She calls them sterile. Sterile means incapable to reproduce things. So she calls them sterile because they are unnatural and go against the harmonious movement of nature. Moving on to the next paragraphs. So, in the earlier paragraph, Duncan talked about the kind of predicament or pathetic state that modern ballet has fallen into. And in this part of the essay, she talks about the new school of dance she proposes to evolve. She says that the fundamental movements of the dance, instead of being sterile, must have within them the seeds from which all other movements can take birth. So, the fundamental movements of dance must have seeds in it which can generate or develop future movements or other movements. Those people who still enjoy ballet or other dances for historical or choreographic purposes see no more beyond the costume of the dancer. And what has happened to the dancer, according to Duncan? The dancer has been basically deformed by the use of incorrect dress and by following incorrect movements. The art form itself has become something contempt as it causes the deformation of the beautiful woman's body. Moving on to the next paragraph. She begins this part of the essay with a rhetorical question. What ideal does the ballet express? Now, I'll tell you what a rhetorical question is. Rhetorical question is a question to which you don't have to give an answer. It's actually a statement that is being made. So, what Duncan says is that after stating numerous reasons that tell us that ballet has taken away from us the will or the movement that signify our union with universe, she makes this rhetorical question to point out the fact that ballet in its present form do not express any ideal. She says that dance was once the most noble of all arts, but it has now fell into a great depth. But she is quite optimistic about its future. She says it will soon rise out of the great depth to which it has fallen, and it will rise to such a height that all other arts will be helped by it. Dance would express what is moral, healthful, and beautiful in art, and this should be the mission of a dancer. And Duncan says that she would dedicate her life to make dance achieve this end. She continues to exhibit her ideas of the art form of dance in this paragraph as well. She says that even the flowers that she can see in front of her contains the idea of dance in it. The dance could be named the light falling on white flowers. So she sees dance even in little things that she sees around her, even in the white flowers that are in front of her. So she says this particular dance could be named the light falling on white flowers. And the dance would include movements that would subtly convey the light that falls on it and the whiteness that you see in the flowers. The dance movements must reflect the core of the subject it treats and must be able to transfer them to the spectator. She also calls dance as a prayer that reaches to heavens and become a part of our eternal lives. What I probably believe Duncan intends to say is that it is both materialistic and spiritualistic at the same time. Moving on to the next set of paragraphs. In these paragraphs, she says that the duty of the new dancer means the practitioner of the new kind of dance that she proposes through this essay. So, the duty of the new dancer must be to identify those primary movements which are in harmony with the movement of the universe and that which will help evolve new movements in the future. She cites the example of Greek god Hermes, who has been represented in sculptures as flying as an example of the importance of movement. So I earlier said in the initial part of this video lesson that we would definitely see her infatuation or appeal for Greek sculptures and Greek art. This is an area where we witness that. So she says she quotes the god Hermes, who has been represented in sculptures as flying as an example of the importance of movement. Duncan believes that it is because the Greeks were greater students of the laws of nature that most of their figures left for us by them suggest a movement of some sort, and we ought to imbibe this idea. Now, in these paragraphs too, Duncan continued to convey her admiration for the Greeks, and this time it is done to show how movement has to be connected with form of the body. She says that just as a beetle's and a horse's movements are connected or correspond to their form, so must humans. And this makes two dancers' movements non-identical. Now, everybody is unique. Everybody's form must correspond to their body, in their individual constitution. And this is why two dancers aren't identical or are non-identical. Duncan also points out the example of a statuette. Statuette means a small statue of dancing Cupid. Cupid is the Roman god of love, and the Greek counterpart for it is Eros. And Duncan also points out the statue of Satyr. Satyr is a creature of the wild, part man and part beast. In Greek, satyrs are represented as man with a horse's ears and a tail, but in the Roman representations, you see a man with goat's ears, tail, legs, and horns. So she points out these statues of Cupid and Satyr to show that the Greeks understood this relationship between body and form. Now, in these paragraphs too, we find Duncan making reference to Greek art. She says that the Greeks evolved their art from their harmonious lifestyle with nature, meaning life in union with nature, and their gods and goddesses are nothing but representations of elements of nature or natural forces. And this is why Greek art does not restrict itself to Greeks alone, but it is something that pertains to humanity of all times. This is exactly why Duncan does while she dances naturally without corresponding to any rules. She imitates or duplicates the movements and poses made by the Greeks because, according to Duncan, the Greeks' movements are or poses are natural poses or earth poses. Now, in these paragraphs, you see that Duncan once again shifts the focus to the self. She says that human body must be the instrument of art. It is the form and symmetry of human body that gave birth to the concept of beauty, and this has been recognized by all artists, be it a poet or a painter or a sculptor. The new dance school that she proposes to establish would be based on these concepts of beauty and movement. She is not sure whether she has the genius or talent or temperament to establish this, but she is sure that she has the will, and this will definitely enable her to do it. Now, this is where Duncan conveys her exact wish, her ambition of a new dance school. Now, this part is not at all difficult for you to understand, and I want you to come across her ambition in her own words. Therefore, I'm going to read this part to you. Dangal says, my intention is, in due time, to found a school, to build a theatre where 100 little girls shall be trained in my art, which they, in their turn, will better. In this school, I shall not teach the children to imitate my movements, but to make their own. I shall not force them to study certain definite movements. I shall help them to develop those movements which are natural to them. Whosoever sees the movements of an untaught little child cannot deny that its movements are beautiful. They are definitely beautiful because they are natural to the child. Even so, the movements of the human body may be beautiful in every stage of development so long as they are in harmony with that stage and degree of maturity which the body has attained. There will always be movements which are the perfect expression of that individual body and that individual soul. So we must not force it to make movements which are not natural to it, but which belong to a school. An intelligent child must be astonished to find that in the ballet school it is taught movements contrary to all those movements which it would make or on its own accord. So what Duncan basically wants to do is that she wants to start a dance school where she would teach students to make natural movements instead of giving them or teaching them strict, definite or defined movements. She wants to do this because she believes that only natural movements would be a perfect expression of the individual's body and soul. Duncan then goes on to point out the prospects or possibilities of the new school that she wishes to found. She says that practicing this art would lead to the development of perfect mothers, which in turn would lead to the birth of healthy and beautiful children. So these are the prospects of this new dance school that she proposes, or what the establishment of such a dance school would entail. It would give women an ideal form, and it would even present the concept of beauty of the age. So that is how significant this dance school would become, or her idea would bring out. That is what Duncan tries to say here. Now, in this paragraph, Duncan expresses her disbelief with the thing that the ballet school in its present form portrays the ideal of beauty in a country. She insists that dance should be able to convey the highest point the spirit of mankind has reached at that particular period, and she is quite doubtful whether ballet school serves this purpose. In these paragraphs, Duncan questions why this dance form has now a deteriorated nature. She asks why are its positions in such contrast to the beautiful positions represented in antique sculptures. These sculptures are presented as perfect models of ideal beauty. But why do we fail to imbibe this beauty into the dance we practice? She recounts the story of the discovery of an ancient sculpture of a Roman girl. The sculpture was so beautiful that people from various lands made pilgrimages to see the statue, and the Pope, under whose reign or rule the sculpture was discovered, decided to bury it again, disturbed by the movement people made across space. So she recounts the story to show how beauty influences movement. That is a point that Duncan tries to make through this analogy or story. Finally, she concludes the essay by stating that she does not want to return to the dances of the ancient Greeks or the primitive tribes, but the dance of the future that she intends to establish through her school would be a highly religious art, meaning a greatly revered or respected art form. That is a kind of art that she wants to establish, or dance that she wants to establish. She will be the movement of this art form that it such will be the movements of this art form that it would be the purest expression of the union of the body and soul of the dancer, and therefore the dancer would be appealing to the entire humanity than just the nation to which the dancer belongs. This dance form would be the realization of the aspiration of thousands of women and would bring to the world the message of freedom of woman. That is how she winds up this particular essay. Thank you so much for being with me. I know that this was a very long journey. We had a number of topics to discuss, and if you are watching this, let me thank you for patiently listening to me. I hope my video lessons have become very resourceful to you. I wish you all the best for the examination, and if you have any doubts or comments to make, please do that in the comment space. If you have doubts, I will definitely try to clear them in every way possible. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of my YouTube family. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you in another video lesson. Bye.